Comprising of a 4:3 aspect ratio screen, a traditional laptop keyboard and track point, and even a 4-pin FireWire connection, my erstwhile IBM Thinkpad R60 was an example of my ideal laptop. All was most certainly well until an ill-fated day came to pass. The laptop was sitting perched atop a small table with its charger's cord gracefully extended to an awkwardly located outlet, and as I clumsily blundered by, my foot caught the cord and dragged the laptop down with it. After this misstep of mine, both literally and figuratively speaking, its display would arbitrarily flicker off and on again, and mysterious system lockups became an everyday event. And it ultimately became so problematic that a replacement was deemed necessary, but finding a similarly equipped laptop turned out to be quite a laborious task. Firstly, it seems that laptops sporting a screen with an aspect ratio of 4:3 have fallen out of favor, and the same can also be said for keyboards of a traditional design and layout. The Lenovo T61 is one of the last laptops to come from Lenovo, if not the last, with a non-widescreen, so-called tallscreen display. It took me a considerable length of time to locate a 4:3 aspect ratio T61. These came equipped with either a 14.1-inch 4:3 display, a 14.1-inch 16:10 display, I believe even a larger screen of 15 or so inches that was 16:10 only. And you can tell the difference between the 4:3 models and the 16:10 models by looking at the bezel that surrounds both sides of the keyboard. And in fact, this was the only way I was able to distinguish the two apart on listings online whose sellers fail to mention which aspect ratio the screen is. You'd think it's pretty easy to tell what aspect ratio it is just by looking at it, but as I've learned in the past, pictures can most definitely be very deceiving. And you can see that these T61s that are 4:3 have the smallest plastic pieces surrounding their keyboards, whereas the 16:10 models have the speakers located, I believe, on the left and right of the keyboard and have a larger plastic trim piece on both sides. One easy way to distinguish the newer Lenovo Thinkpads from those which came out during the IBM and Lenovo merger, and even those that came before then, which were manufactured solely by IBM, is that this bears absolutely no insignia or references to IBM. You can see that this just says Thinkpad, as does its palm rest, and over here it just says Lenovo. There's no mention of IBM anywhere on this machine. The presence of a display latch keeping the lid closed is a most welcome feature for me, and I say that because I've dealt with so many laptops in the past whose display hinges have gotten so ridiculously loose. Just like Thinkpads of the past, you get a VGA, an analog VGA connection with holes to properly secure the cable in place, a 56K dial-up modem. You'd be surprised how many people still have a need for these things, especially in locations that don't have free wireless internet or high-speed internet or anything of that nature, and the only option is to connect via a phone line. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum is a Gigabit Ethernet card with access lights, microphone and headphone jacks, both of which are stereo. There's also a vertically oriented USB port and an express card PC card slot, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't found myself having a need to use these, but I probably will, because this ThinkPad opted to replace the FireWire connection, which was on the 16:10 models right here, with an infrared transceiver, which has certainly fallen out of use with the masses, what with Bluetooth and Gigabit connectivity, so there really is no need for that. But I'll have to find myself some sort of an express card or PC card that I'll be able to use with this computer to provide FireWire connectivity. A switch is provided for enabling and disabling the wireless radios, as well as the Bluetooth connectivity this computer supports. That's much better. One of the determining factors for my scoring this computer so inexpensively is that it didn't come with a hard drive. This is a Seagate 250 gigabyte 7200 RPM hard drive. I also needed to hunt down a hard drive bay caddy, unless you want to take your chances and just connect the hard drive without a hard drive caddy. I also did not receive the piece of plastic trim which covers the hard drive bay, so once the hard drive is installed, if I could do this without knocking over the computer from its precarious resting place on this Gorilla Tape roll, but since I'm not going to be doing anything that would probably put a tough book through its paces, I don't really need to worry about that. The hard drive is firmly seated in its enclosure. It's nice and snug, so there's no chance of it really coming out, short of my dropping this computer onto the floor. And if that were the case, I'm sure I'd have bigger problems on my hands than just the hard drive falling out. The DVD CDRW optical drive is much thinner than that which was provided on the previous generations of Thinkpads, and I've also noticed that it doesn't output any of the interesting digital noise and interference that the previous optical drives on earlier Thinkpads did, which actually became a major annoyance to me, so much so that I ended up removing the optical drive every time I would listen to something involving headphones, because a sort of clicking and ticking noise from the optical drive was making its way all the way into the audio output when using headphones. Unfortunately, the close proximity of the two horizontally USB 2.0 ports on the right side of the computer will make for a difficult, if not impossible, connection of two USB flash drives, because most of the time the USB flash drives are quite larger than their connecting jack, and so trying to connect two of these at the same time probably won't work too terribly well. You probably have to bend one of them, so you'd probably only be able to connect one to the left vertical USB 2.0 port and another on the right side. But if you're just connecting a mouse and keyboard, you probably shouldn't have any problems. And a Kensington lock to prevent anyone from walking off with the computer, of course. And a 20 volt center pin positive DC power connection. Deviating from my previous ThinkPad, the speakers are not oriented to face you alongside the wireless radio switch, but they're actually located on the bottom of the computer. Lenovo 10.8 volt, 5.2 amp hour rechargeable battery, which is healthy. I believe, according to the Lenovo Power Manager, it claims that it is retaining about 71% of its original charge, which I can't complain about, considering that the vast majority of these ThinkPads and their batteries that you receive, or any laptop for that matter, you buy used as a non-functional, completely dead battery. You might notice an artifact from previous models of ThinkPads which supported cellular connectivity, which did have a SIM card connection with which this computer does not come equipped. Now, I've just been experimenting with this computer, and the opportunity to clean the computer properly hasn't presented itself yet. Intel Centrino V Pro inside. The existence of a traditional ThinkPad keyboard is most fortunate, meaning that I am, well, not exactly a fan of chiclet keyboards and their shortcomings when it comes to productivity. And then the track points buttons, the touchpad, and the touchpad's buttons, which is similarly sized to previous generations of ThinkPads. I had the fortune to try out a T400 to evaluate whether or not it would be a suitable replacement for me. And while it was certainly zippy and fast, it could handle 60p 1920 by 1080 full HD videos and pretty much anything else I could throw at it. I wasn't much a fan of the 16 by 10 display, and I noticed that it had a larger touchpad than this. This is a more traditionally sized touchpad, which won't take any getting used to at all, considering it's the exact same size as my older ThinkPad. And there is a fingerprint reader if you want the utmost of security for your laptop, which I won't have any need for, considering that a password is more than enough for my needs. You get ample indication of the computer's functional state and its ancillary services, such as Bluetooth, the wireless radio, caps and numlock, the hard drive, power, the battery, AC connectivity, and or when it's in sleep mode. which you do get some indication of on the exterior of the PC for a quick glance at its current state of affairs, operationally speaking. If all is well, we should have no trouble booting in and getting into the BIOS setup. Just to take a brief look at its configuration, I might need to dim this light ever so slightly or turn it off completely. I don't know what it's doing now. I didn't ask it to boot into, I think, Vantage Technologies or whatever that might actually be. So we'll have to take a look at this. Oh, it booted me into rescue and recovery, which I didn't want to do. I'll have to turn the computer off now. And well, as it turns out, Lenovo's rescue and recovery environment is commandeering the accessibility of the setup utility, the BIOS if you will, because normally with rescue and recovery not installed, you need only press the Thinkvantage button when it's attempting to start and you'll gain easy access to the BIOS. It's a Core 2 Duo T7500, so I misspoke before and provided incorrect information when stating the CPU speed being 2.22 gigahertz, and the phone just won't stop ringing around here enough and long enough for me to make a video. Now that I've been able to assuage the caller, I can at least finally return to my video making activities. So as it stands with Lenovo's rescue and recovery environment installed, when you press the Thinkvantage button, you don't go to the BIOS setup, you actually go to the rescue and recovery environment, which allows you to recover an image that you created of the hard drive. It is taking some getting used to, because you can see how much smaller the logon window is compared to what it usually is. So even though this screen is the same size as my R60, the R60 had a 1024 by 768 resolution, whereas this screen has a much larger resolution. And as a result of that, being that it's using a higher resolution, you could fit much more on the screen than you could with a similarly sized screen, but with a smaller resolution. Another unique aspect of this computer is it comes not with the basic Intel 945 graphics chipset. It actually comes with the Nvidia Quattro NVS 140M discrete graphics. A major pitfall of this computer's audio hardware, being the SoundMax integrated digital audio, is that it does not have the capability to support stereo mix, at least on its own without any third-party programs. If I go to recording, the only option it has is for microphone. There's no ability to use stereo mix to record whatever it is your computer hears digitally. I know, sure, I can probably jerry-rig something using a headphone splitter and then put it into the microphone jack, but well, that's not going to be as high quality and it's not nearly as simple. You now have to drag around pieces of hardware to accomplish what was once able to be done through software. Well, ThinkPads come in all shapes and sizes, and they also come in different configurations despite having and sharing the same shapes and sizes. That's one thing to be on the lookout for, and I didn't even know that this was one of the higher quality ThinkPads that came with the Nvidia graphics. And I was perfectly content with getting one with only Intel graphics, so that was a much welcome surprise. And much to everyone's chagrin, I actually did install all the Thinkvantage bloatware. Certain things are necessary, and I figured if I'm going to take the trouble and time to install one, I might as well install all of them, such as access connections and the power manager and rescue and recovery and the fingerprint software. For example, when I press the wireless button, we now have options to enable and disable Bluetooth and the wireless. Also have the power manager, which when pressing that should bring up the power manager, or at least the power use, and shows you the remaining time. And an hour and 41 minutes on a battery whose life expectancy is only about 71% of its original amount is really quite surprising. One thing that really tested my patience was the on-screen display, because the version that Lenovo supplies on their website for this ThinkPad that claims to be compatible with versions of Windows dating to Windows 2000 and going all the way up to Windows 8.1, it doesn't work. No matter what you do, it will not work. And so through the grace of some anonymous forum poster, I was able to discover an older version of the on-screen display which works without issue. So now I get a visual representation of the volume, the screen brightness, and so on and so forth. Ignoring the smudge on the screen and looking above it, you'll see that there is a keyboard light here. And just like on previous models of ThinkPads, this too comes with a Think light, or whatever they want to call it. I know there's some sort of special name for it. And enabling it gives you a dim but very usable white glow over your keyboard so that you can easily see what you're doing in the dead of night when you're in the middle of working on some top secret confidential document you don't want anyone to know about. It isn't amber like my R60, but it'll do fine, and it's certainly better than nothing. And I'd much rather have a keyboard light than a web camera, which I have no use for anyway. Don't you just hate when applications make unwarranted, unnecessary, and unauthorized changes to your computer? Like Firefox plastering its logo over every PDF document on this computer, despite Adobe Reader being installed. I should note that the AC adapter which was supplied with this laptop is a genuine Lenovo product, but unlike the one which was used with the Thinkpad R60, this is not a 65 watt model, it's actually a 90 watt model, and so it should stand to reason then that this will charge the battery at a faster rate than that which the previous charger was able to accomplish, and it's markedly heavier than the 65 watt model. I would not be the least bit surprised if the previous owner, being a government entity, used this solely with its docking station and used an external keyboard and external mouse. Oh my god, today. I find the information provided through Lenovo's Power Manager to be exceedingly useful and also interesting. It was manufactured in 2008. Really quite fascinating. Although it's interesting that it says 56 watt hours here, but then it says its total watt hour rating is 38. My configuration of an HP DeskJet F4135 has culminated, with my growing increasingly frustrated with providers of drivers, companies in particular whose products require specialty drivers, which aren't provided for through Windows. At first I was led to believe that the only way I could download this was to download their software and utility, the full-featured program, which is 162 megabytes when I only need the driver itself. And it turns out that the option to download just the basic printer-only driver becomes available only after you select Microsoft Windows XP. If you have it set to Windows 7 as the OS, that option disappears, and I'll prove that right now if I update this. Oh, how convenient. It can't even retrieve the drivers. This can take up to 3 minutes. It doesn't take that long. Oh, lovely. Now it's not even showing any drivers. Well, that just bodes to my claims of these websites being counterproductive to actually finding and using what you need to. Can't even find a driver for Windows 7. Congratulations, Hewlett-Packard. While it struggles to keep up with 1080p 60 video, 720p 60 is smooth as butter. It is, of course, providing that the internet keeps up with it, which it isn't. You have to take my word for it, because the internet just isn't having it tonight. So I go into the Nvidia control panel. You can see that it's 1400 by 1050. For some reason, when I first installed it, it was set to only 16-bit color and not 32-bit. So I did change that. Totally irrelevant and skewed, because this is not to show the capabilities of this computer's wireless radio. This is to show you how poor the internet connection is at this time of night right now, at about 11 p.m. That is miserable. They are actually playing vinyl on this station. That is amazing. But it is a college station, so I'm actually playing some classic country, a genre that is severely disadvantaged in this market. There's no classic country station to speak of. In fact, all we have is pop country. I'll stick to this, thank you very much. Users of Thinkpads in the past will probably remember that pressing the ThinkVantage button would bring up one of two applications depending on when your system was manufactured and how it was equipped, either with Lenovo PC Doctor or ThinkVantage Toolbox, and none of those programs are actually presently installed because it's next to impossible to track them down, with Lenovo having discontinued them. But pressing the button now brings up the ThinkVantage Productivity Center, which really doesn't allow you to do anything you weren't already able to do through other means. For example, the Bluetooth and the wireless radio. Well, you could just press FN and F5, and to find a new wireless network, you just go down there and search for it as you normally would. So this is pretty much useless, so I won't really use that ever. One thing I am curious to test out is the Bluetooth functionality, and it will need to be brief because it seems I only have 30 minutes remaining on this current battery's charge. I need to enable the Bluetooth radio by pressing the F5 key and power on the Bluetooth radio, and then the LED light indicates and reflects the change. The device is now connected to the PC, and we are able to stream audio wirelessly. You can see it reflects that in the notification area. The Bluetooth icon is now turned green. Since I don't yet have any music on this computer, I'll pop a CD in there.
When I think I'm gonna get away, I hear those words that you always say. I wanna reach out and grab you.
I'm unsure of whether you can hear it, but I certainly can in real life, and I'm noticing some sibilant issues, which is probably a result of the Bluetooth wireless audio platform's limitations.
Mini Jam box paired.